Let us have a look at the Benin Empire. Under the Benin Empire, we are going to look at some kings that reigned under Benin Empire. Benin Empire was one of the well-organized political units that existed in what is known today as Nigeria. Precisely part of the Benin Empire can be found in the present-day south of Nigeria and some parts of the southeast of Nigeria. Benin Empire was renowned, influential, and very powerful. It is an empire that, in a bit to study history, you cannot push aside. And the empire was established by the Edo-speaking people. Edo-speaking people are presently in Edo State of Nigeria, with the capital at Benin City. So you cannot rule out studying the history of Benin Empire if you have to study the history of West Africa, Africa at large, while also in the history of Nigeria. With this establishment, the Benin Empire was very influential. At the time, there was strong influence of Benin Empire to other parts of the world. Europeans, especially the Portuguese and the British and the Dutch, sent emissaries, created voyages that were targeted at coming to Benin Empire for the establishment of business and also for Christianization. Looking at the rulership of the empire, the earliest political dynasty under Benin Empire was the Ogiso dynasty. The Ogiso dynasty. The Ogiso dynasty lasted for a period of time, with the last king of the Ogiso dynasty being Oba Iwedo. Oba Iwedo, some may call him Owodo, was the last king of the traditional stooge or the traditional dynasty called the Ogiso dynasty. Traditional states that Oba Iwedo banished his only son, who founded another small kingdom called Owoto. But Oba Iwedo misruled Benin Empire to the point that he had very terrible experience, and most of his policies were so terrible. He was said to have even taken people's wives and all that, and this led to him not having a successor, and also practically being the last. In fact, he was said to have even been banished from Benin Empire. Now, another thing was that after Oba Iwedo's reign, Benin Empire had some republic structure, experienced some republic structure. Under that period, two men became administrators of Benin Empire. One of them was Evian, while the other one was Ogiemve. These two men made attempts to establish dynasties of their own, but failed. They made attempts to establish dynasties of their own, but they failed. Now this takes us to the next point in Benin Empire. That is the coming of Prince Aramian. Now, this is where some historians tend to get some things wrong. At this point, there was this projection that the Benin people or the Edo people can trace their origin from Yoruba land. But this is not to be, because it is not a fact. Yes, there was an issue or a period in the history of Benin Empire when a prince from Yoruba land came to Benin Empire and became the leader for some time. Precisely, that prince's name was Prince Aramian. Prince Aramian, according to tradition, was from the lineage of Oduduwa. When the Benin people had issue politically, mainly on the issue of political control, they requested help from Oduduwa. Oduduwa sent his last son, Aramian, to Benin Empire. When Aramian came to Benin Empire, he attempted to establish his government. Well, he made some impacts, but he encountered resistance from the people and also from the administrators. Precisely, Ogiamve wasn't comfortable because he had intention of creating his own dynasty. Now, Aramian lived in a small palace built for him by at Osama. Osama was part of the empire. He attempted to leave Benin Empire when he found out that there was strong resistance against his control. He attempted to leave Benin Empire, but realized that one of the chiefs in Benin Empire, that the daughter of one of the chiefs in Benin Empire was carrying his baby. So this made him to stay for some time. Now, by the end of the day, the fruit or the child, the son that the daughter of the Benin chief bore for Aramian, became the first leader under a new dynasty called the Eweka Dynasty. This is a critical point in the history of Benin Empire. So when Aramian got fed up at Benin, he called a meeting of the chiefs and people and remarked that Benin was the land of vexation, and he renounced his office. He turned to Yoruba land, where, according to a tradition, he founded Old Oyo Empire. Tradition thus linked Benin to the Yoruba people. Historians who looked very critical at the tradition of Aramian and his invitation to Benin Empire argue strongly against the projection that the Edo people can trace their origin to Benin, to Yoruba land. Now this takes us to the first king under a new dynasty called the Eweka Dynasty. That is Eweka I. So let's look at this king, Eweka I. Eweka I, or Eweka the First, was the son of Aramian. He started the second dynasty, which has lasted long in Benin Empire. According to the tradition, Eweka had a long and glorious reign. His reign was important because he made the reforms in the governance of Benin Empire. He created the Supreme Council of State called the Ozama, and these Ozama became kingmakers. The council consists of 7 councillors who were later to be king makers. That is Eweka the First. The next king we have to consider or look or study under Benin Empire was Iwedo. Iwedo was the grandson and successor of Eweka the First. He was the grandson of Eweka. He was nicknamed the Idolator because he had great interest in traditional religion and magic. He realized that support from the traditional religious courts could enhance his political power. Hence, he appointed a medicine man as his chief priest. He suppressed the revolt by Ogiamve, one of the chiefs who lived in the heart of Benin. His army conquered Ogiamve's army, and Ewedo entered into the heart of Benin, surrounded by inner walls. If you have visited the area, you must have observed and heard the walls of Benin, which happen to be one of the historical sites in the Nigeria today. There in Benin City, he built his palace. Before that time, the Oba lived at Osama. That's where Aramian settled, which was situated between the inner and the outer walls of Benin. Till today, it is at Osama that the new Oba is installed, and a ceremony is performed to celebrate the victory of Ewedo over Ogiamve. According to tradition, Ewedo made good laws, built a prison for criminals, and created more titles. He also started the custom of chiefs standing in the presence of the Oba instead of sitting, as they used to do before. Before this period, the chiefs under Benin Empire were made to sit in the front of the Oba. But with the transformations brought in by Ewedo, this practice was changed. Chiefs were made to stand in front of the Oba. Presently today, the Oba of Benin, when he is in his courts, the chiefs were made to stand, or they stood before him. They didn't sit, or they don't sit before the Oba. Ewedo was succeeded by his son, Oguola, who, according to the tradition, built the walls around Benin. Many famous brass works were made during the reign of Oguola. Now let's look at another king, Eware the Great. Eware the Great reigned from 1440 to 1473. 1440 to 1473. He ascended the throne at a time when Benin was in great need for an able leader. A number of weak kings ruled in Benin before him. Their reigns were punctuated by court intrigues, rebellions, and factions. Under Eware, the situation changed. He imposed a strong government in Benin City and all the areas he conquered. Now, from this period, there was strong expansion in the political unit of the area, making Benin from a kingdom to an empire. So Eware the Great was a great warrior. He transformed Benin Kingdom into an empire by fighting against and conquering. Eware was a great warrior. He transformed Benin into an empire from a kingdom by fighting many villages and towns that were surrounding the Benin Empire, thereby transforming Benin from a kingdom to an empire. According to tradition, he conquered 201 villages in Igbo land: Ekiti, Eka, Ikare, and Kukuruku, and made the people to pay tribute to him. Eware was a great administrator. He made reforms in the government of Benin. Before he came to the throne, the palace chiefs were too powerful at the expense of the Oba, who could not, as a result, govern properly. To strengthen the authority of the Oba, Eware established the town chiefs. 4 town chiefs were appointed to live in the town. Each of them was in charge of a major street. The palace chiefs continued to live in the palace. The senior town chiefs, the Iyashere, was made the commander-in-chief of the army. The town chiefs sat with the palace chiefs and the Osama on the state council, which according to tradition, Eware also set up. While minor decisions were taken by the Oba with the advice of his senior chiefs, fundamental decisions like the declaration of war, making of new laws, raising of revenues were made by the state councils. Eware strengthened the religion and sacred aspects of kingship in Benin. More than Ewedo, he promoted the worship of idols. He led and declared and underrated the religious cults, realizing that magic and charms contributed as it did immensely to the political powers. According to tradition, he made powerful charms which he buried to each of the 9 gateways to Benin in order to prevent any evil which the enemies might bring to his subjects. Tradition also states that Eware made good roads in Benin. Benin rose in importance and became city during his reign. Now let us look at a few other kings. One of them was Oba Ozolua. Oba Ozolua reigned from 1481 to 1505. And there were 2 important, the Oba's reign was important in 2 major events. He pursued expansionist policies and extended the frontiers of Benin to Ekiti and Ijebu Kingdom. The second important event which took place during his reign was the visit of a Portuguese agent, Afonso de Aveiro, in 1485 and 1486. Oba Ozolua asked the king of Ugoton to follow Afonso as his ambassador to Portugal. As a result, commercial relations was established between Portugal and Benin. With the cooperation of Ozolua and the chiefs of Ugoton, the Portuguese set up a trading factory at Ugoton. Now let's look at the next king, which is also very important. Oba Esijie. Oba Esijie. Oba Esijie reigned from 1505 to 1550. I continued the expansionist policy of Ozolua. He invaded Eda in about 1515, and Eda became one of the vassal states which paid tribute to Benin. The Aveiro visited Benin again during the reign of Oba Esijie and advised him to become a Christian. Oba Esijie sent the Oba Ozolua. Oba Esijie sent, as Oba Ozolua did, the king of Ugoton to follow Aveiro to the king of Portugal to demand missionaries and firearms. The king of Portugal sent the Oba of Benin's missionaries and a gift of constant copper stool, copper beads, and a big umbrella, to mention but a few. The Portuguese traders also followed the missionaries to trade in pepper, ivory, and Benin clothes. So there was an exchange of ambassadorial or diplomatic relationship between Benin Empire and the Portuguese. This made the Oba to have sent one of his chiefs to be an ambassador of Benin in Portugal. The same way the Portugal reciprocated that gesture. The Portuguese reciprocated the same gesture to the Benin Empire. Benin achieved great glory and military achievement under Oba Esijie. English visitors to Benin, as at that time, testified that Benin had 30 straight streets, about 120 feet broad, with feeder streets at right angles to them. They concluded that the Oba also filled an army of 100,000 men. Now let's look at another king, Oba Orobua. Oba Orobua reigned from 1550 to 1578. He was a Christian and an educated Oba. During his reign, trade with the Portuguese developed fast, and Benin became an important post in West. So the next king in line we have to look at for and analyze his achievement was Oba Orobua. Oba Orobua reigned from 1550 to 1578. He was a Christian. He converted to Christianity and was an educated Oba. During his reign, trade was developed with the Portuguese, and Benin became a very important European business post. This was important because Benin was linked to other trade routes in the Nigerian area, precisely the Hausa land through the trans-Saharan trade pattern. Oba Orobua was a great warrior who continued the expansionist policies and conquered a large proportion of places up to the coast of Lagos, where he left a permanent unit of his army. After the reign of Oba Orobua, the development in Benin took a standstill. Things went from positivity to negativity. Then there was a period of stagnation, which later brought about the visit or the coming of other European nations, precisely the British, into Benin Empire. And then this pulled down to the period upon which the empire was taken over by the British government, and at the same time made as one of the parts of the area known today as Nigeria. I think in one of our earliest videos also, we discussed about Oba of Aramian and his attempt to stop the influence of the British or the taking over of the British of Benin Empire. So I will advise you to revisit some of our videos in order to find out some more or get more information about the history of Africa. Please subscribe to our channel, hit the notification bell so that whenever we drop any video, you'll be one of the first persons to be notified. We continue bringing out very great content in African history, and we'll continue working with our partners in order to get the best for all of our listening viewers. Please subscribe to our channel, share our videos, share our presentations on your social media platform, and then continue to be with us. Thank you for being there. Please, please, and please again subscribe to our channels. Thank you.